let's talk animal release conditioning. When you are trying to give your animal the best chance at life and it needs to be in the wild where it belongs, there is something called a soft release and a hard release. A hard release is when you take it to the middle of the woods. If it's a nocturnal animal, like an opossum, it would be released at dusk, like sunset. Think like the golden hour or whatever. And you want it to be as far away from humans as possible because humans are a huge threat to all wildlife, obviously. That's probably how you ended up with it. And you want to do it near a water source, preferably a creek, something with running water, because that's where they like to go to the bathroom. That's where they like to get access to fish, things like that. And when there's water, there's usually bugs. There's usually access to like a lot of things they need. It's a sad start because you don't get to see them again. You don't get to see if they're okay. You don't get to know anything that happens to them. It's a whole miserable vibe. A soft release is the ideal release because it's when somebody has their outdoor enclosure, think chicken coop or something along those lines, where they'll do their pre-release conditioning there. And then when it's time to release them, they'll open the door and the creature will go out and have the door remain open so they can return to the security of where it was that they last felt safe. And a lot of times they just won't come back. And that's a good thing. That means that they've found their way out. That's the job. Sometimes they will come back. Sometimes they're hurt or they're not ready to go or they're scared or they ran out of food or they couldn't figure out the foraging. There's a million reasons. Or they just want you. They just like you. They've decided this is their spot. And you get the benefit of being able to see them again. Now, this only works if you live on, nice acreage, far enough away from people, etc., etc. So I don't have access to a thing like that. I live in the middle of a little town with a bunch of rednecks right next door, and they kill things for sport. I'm pretty sure most of my neighbors aim for turtles in the road, so none of my animals, nope, not that I've ever done that. This is all hypothetical. So another thing about soft release, if you do soft release, you don't want to do too many in the same location. So oftentimes, you need like a 5-year rotation between a certain number. I don't know what the ratio is, but I cut people off at 7. And that's usually about the same size litter as an opossum litter or something like that. It's usually about 7. So that's usually my cutoff. If I, bring 1 to one person's house and then I bring 3 later on and then I bring, a couple more, then I'm like, okay, well, that spot's maxed out. I'm going to give it about like 3 or 4 years because it's usually their lifespan. And then I'll come back to that spot. So, I try to keep my hoes in rotation. Another alternative issue is if you live in the middle of nowhere, you're likely to live on farm country, and there are you just need to do almost like an environmental study. You just need to know how these creatures influence the livestock and things around them. So, like, for example, if you got a lot of horses, you don't want a lot of opossums because opossums carry some sort of bacteria, not all of them, but some of them can carry some sort of bacteria that they pass through their feces, that they pass on the grass that gets eaten by horses, and it can make the horses very sick. And I don't know what it is, but it can kill them, and it's a big deal. The odds of that I wonder about, because opossums notoriously, if you've ever kept an opossum, hypothetically, they like to poop in water. They don't like to go in the middle of a freaking field where horses graze. But, when you gotta go, you gotta go. So who can control these things? So those are the 2 pre-release options. And the main important thing, regardless of which one you do, is pre-release conditioning. Now, it's advised 2 to 3 weeks pre-release conditioning, and that's, depending on how they seem to be doing. But I usually do it for a month, sometimes 2 months if they're really dumb. And trust me, a lot of my ones are really dumb. It involves, you want an outdoor kennel. I concreted in the bottom of my kennel for, we're going to, for whatever I felt like doing with it. I planted a lot of vegetables in there to get a lot of bugs. So that was like the whole vibe, is like, teaching them to hunt. I don't do any pesticides or anything, and nobody around me can afford pesticides because we live where we live and it's the times that we live in. So that's a benefit. I don't do any chemicals in my garden at all. So whatever lives. So it's as close to natural as possible. It's got a bunch of, little hidey holes in it to teach them where to like choose their enclosed area. It's got access to running water. I made a little river. And the most important thing is it's made out of chain link and covered in chicken wire, because like things like raccoons and cats they'll get in there and they'll try to get to them. Ideally, you'll do a hardware cloth, but we're not bougie like that. And you want to seal in the top of it, and you want it to be at least 6 by 12. As big as you can, just to teach them digging. I've been dumping earthworms in there. I've been dumping waxworms, caterpillars, all kinds of things, crickets, just anything I can think of to teach them, like, okay, the bowl isn't coming back. I don't get to have a bowl. I need to dig things and hunt things and run around. And, a lot of it is pretty innate, or intuitive. I don't remember which word means they were born with the knowledge. I think it's innate. Anyway, a lot of it is that, so they figure that out pretty quickly. And it also gives them an opportunity to kind of get wild again, because it takes very little for a wild animal to go back to being wild, but you don't want them to look for people. You don't want them to approach people. 90% of the time, wherever they are, if they approach a person, it's a dangerous situation, and they don't need that. It's not, you don't want them feeling confident and safe around humans. We're pretty horrific creatures on our own. So it gives them it puts them back into feral, puts them back into, don't touch my stuff, do you like my stupid earrings? Don't come near me. And then after the conditioning is done, it also gives them access to like acclimating to the weather. Like, you don't just dump a fish in a fish tank. You need to get them used to the temperature of the fish tank, right? And it's the same thing. You don't want them to be out there and they run away from the creek because they don't know what a creek sounds like, and they don't know that that's what they're supposed to be near, and now they're in the middle of nowhere with no water, and it's Alabama summer type shit, So it's like things like that. It gets them back into like their regular nocturnal stuff, where they get their sleep cycle back, because they'll acclimate to your sleep cycle pretty dang quick and be awake when you're awake and be asleep when you're asleep. And that's not good for them. Like, they're white. That sounded weird, but they are. And white is a very bright color in nature, and it's very easy to track it. You don't want them running around in the daytime, blazing white and gray, and like have a bunch of things looking for them. They need to be out at night anyway, and they're blind in the day. That's another thing. They're completely like, everything's like, you ever get out of a swimming pool and everything's really hazy and like you can't really see anything very good? It's like that times 100. Like, I did this once, hypothetically, where I put a bag of crickets in the bathtub, plugged the drain, didn't put any water in, I dropped the animal in there, and it was going for him. It was kind of getting the idea. And then I turned the lights off, and it was like a massacre. It was like, all you heard was like, how, and then the smack, 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 smack. It's the best sound in the world. Anyway, that's my process. My kennel, I'm gathering some, like, throughout the year, I'm just gathering more sticks and more I mean, it's probably the healthiest part of my entire yard, honestly, because of like how much mulch, not real mulch, but like nature's mulch. I don't know, just like leaves and stuff. It all works out so well, and everything that I planted in there is healthy for them to have in their environment and healthy for them to eat. Like, think spinach, carrots, things like that. And that's another thing. It kind of teaches them, it doesn't teach them to eat greens. They don't like greens. But it teaches them to eat the bugs that are already eating the greens. And so they get used to the flavor of, because the crickets that you get from the pet store, they don't taste the same as a wild cricket. So, it is what it is. Anyway, somebody asked me about it, and I figured I'd make a video. And if you're in Alabama and you think you might have access to land that would be decent for this type of thing, feel free to hit me up, because it's rough out here for a pimp. Everything I'm saying is good for the states that are not Alabama, because it's illegal in Alabama to do any of this unless you're a licensed rehabber, even though Alabama hasn't licensed any new rehabbers in like 20 freaking years. And the head of DNR said that wildlife rehabbers in Alabama are an unnecessary evil. So vote correctly this November, because goddamn, I'm sorry. Anyway, so yeah, that's where we're at. And if you find an animal, feel free to reach out to me, because I've gotten a good connection with a lot of rehabbers, especially, not out of state, but rehabbers that can transport to the out of state rehabbers that can do some of the animals that are highly illegal to do in Alabama. And I found the underground, so to speak, because it's not illegal to transport a wild animal, even if it's like on the rabies vector species. It's not illegal to transport it to a licensed rehabber. It is illegal to take it home and turn it into a pet. It is illegal to try to feed them and keep them alive and keep them healthy and release them back into the wild where you found them or where they need to be. That's illegal. It's not illegal to have, I don't know, a boa constrictor, a ball python, or what were the snakes that are like incredibly invasive and jacking everything up? It's not illegal to have those. It's not illegal to have a freaking monkey. It's not illegal to have a kangaroo. We got hella kangaroos out here. What the heck is going on? That's not illegal, but it's illegal to protect the natural wildlife around. If you do it with a rabies vector species, it's a felony, a federal offense. It is a felony. And that's with chipmunks, raccoons, squirrels, rats, mice, deer, anything that's on the foxes, bats, obviously. That's you're gonna serve time, and you're gonna get a huge fine, and it's gonna be a bad time, and they're gonna kill your animal, and they're not gonna do it nicely. They're not gonna just bullet to the head. They drown them. They put them in the freezer. It's like they get off on this stuff. It's disgusting. Opossums are just a misdemeanor, because at least the DNR and all of that figured out, they don't have the body temperature to keep rabies alive in their bodies, so they're not that dangerous. Whatever. Can snakes get rabies? I'm gonna Google that. Anyway, all right. Yeah, I don't have an opossum. What I have are two little ratties, and I love them, and they're very cute, and they're very sweet, and they're very stinky, and they're my favorites, and it's so exciting to feed them, and I love it so much. And it's really funny, because if anybody thought I had an opossum in the cage on my porch, that's a giant parrot cage, it's not. It's two little ratties. You just must have been like, you must have been confused that day when you thought you saw an opossum. Anyway, good luck. Thank you for caring. Thank you for doing your best. Thank you for trying your hardest. Feel free to reach out to me. I've had experience transporting quite a few different species and keeping them alive on the transport and all that might entail while they get them to the proper authorities. Is it an authority? Anyway. All right. Toodles. It's illegal to transport across state lines. That's very illegal, regardless of the animal, almost. Okay, that was the last thing I wanted to say. All right.